It started with an unexpected phone call on a quiet Tuesday night. I was sitting at the kitchen table, helping our 6-year-old daughter Emma with her spelling when my phone rang. My mother's voice sounded unusually cheerful. "We've been talking," she said brightly. "You and Jessica need a night to yourselves. When's your anniversary?" I nearly dropped the phone. In all the years Jessica and I had been married, 12 to be exact, my parents had never once offered to babysit. Not after Emma was born. Not even when the twins, Luke and Mason, arrived 3 years later. Not once. Not for emergencies. Not for a date night. Not even when we were barely hanging on from exhaustion. "This Saturday," I replied, still unsure if I'd heard her correctly. "But, Mom, you always said 3 kids were too much to handle." "Don't be ridiculous," she replied. "We're their grandparents. It's high time we did our part." I found Jessica in the kitchen packing the kids' lunchboxes for school. "You're not going to believe this," I told her. "My parents offered to babysit for our anniversary." She froze mid-swipe with the peanut butter knife. "Your parents? The same ones who showed up hours late to Emma's birthday? The same ones who didn't even bother coming to the twins' kindergarten graduation?" "The very same," I said. Jessica's expression was wary. She'd been burned by my parents too many times. Her own folks drove 3 hours every month just to spend a weekend with the kids. Mine lived 20 minutes away and barely showed up on holidays. "Maybe they're trying to change," I suggested, not entirely convinced myself. She sighed. "Maybe. The kids deserve all their grandparents to be present." Saturday came quicker than expected. I'd made a reservation at the little Italian place where Jessica and I had our first date. She wore that blue dress I adored, the one that made her smile in the mirror. For the first time in ages, we felt like a couple again, instead of just tired parents passing each other between carpool shifts and late-night feedings. My parents arrived at exactly 6 o'clock. That, in itself, was a miracle. Dad came in carrying an overnight bag, and Mom held a Tupperware container. "Fresh-baked cookies," she said cheerfully, though I could clearly see they'd been repackaged from a grocery store brand. "The kids are excited," I said. Only half true. Emma was ecstatic. The boys barely looked up from their video games. "Twins go to bed at 8, Emma at 8:30, Jessica explained calmly. "All emergency contacts are on the fridge. Emma's inhaler is in the medicine cabinet. She hasn't needed it lately, but just in case." Mom gave a tight smile. "We raised kids of our own. We know how this works." As we gathered our things to leave, I noticed Dad standing oddly in the hallway, half blocking the overnight bag. When I walked by, he shifted quickly, almost shielding it. "Everything okay, Dad?" I asked. "Fine," he replied, wiping sweat from his brow, even though the house was comfortably cool. "Just excited to spend time with our grandkids." Jessica came down the stairs, adjusting an earring. She spotted the bag and smiled. "Oh, you packed for an overnight? That's really sweet. We won't be out too late, though." She reached for the bag, probably intending to carry it to the guest room. Dad lunged forward. "No." But it was too late. Jessica had already opened the zipper. Her face turned ghost white. She screamed, "Get the kids. Call the police. Now." I rushed over and looked inside. My blood turned to ice. Rope. Duct tape. Bottles of children's Benadryl. Prescription sedatives. Labels torn off. A handgun I never knew my father owned. And 3 small suitcases, color-coded. Pink for Emma, blue for the boys. "What is this?" I asked, my voice hoarse and shaking. Mom's warm smile evaporated. Her expression turned stone cold. "It's not what you think." Jessica was already upstairs, grabbing the children and locking them in our bedroom. "It looks like kidnapping gear," she yelled back down. Dad moved toward the stairs. I stepped in front of him. "Don't," I said firmly. My pulse was thundering in my ears. "You don't understand," he said. "We're trying to save them." "From what?" I asked. "From you," Mom hissed, pointing upstairs. "From this life. From her." "You've lost your minds," I said. "Have we?" she shot back, her eyes crazed. "You never bring them to visit. You never answer our calls. You're brainwashing them to forget us. We've invited you to everything." I shouted. "School plays, birthdays. Pity invites," Dad growled. "Her parents get the front row seats. We get ignored." Sirens howled in the distance. Mom's expression twisted into something almost mournful. We just wanted real time with them, she whispered. Time without you two calling the shots. Kidnapping them was your answer? I demanded. We were going to take them on a trip, Dad said, almost pleading. Show them something beyond this cage. With drugs and a gun. I snapped. The sedatives were in case they got upset, he replied. And the weapon? Your mother insisted, he muttered. Protection, she barked. From anyone who tried to stop us from being real grandparents. That's when the front door flew open. Police officers rushed in with weapons raised. Hands where we can see them. Within seconds, my parents were face down on the floor, being cuffed. There, I said, pointing at the bag. That's what they brought. An officer snapped photos. A field test revealed that the Benadryl had been laced with a much stronger tranquilizer. The pills were confirmed to be prescription-grade sedatives, enough to knock out grown adults. Where were you planning to take them? The detective asked later. My parents shared a look. Florida, Mom said. We have a condo there. We just wanted a week or two. You weren't going to tell us, I said, stunned. We left a note, Dad replied quietly. It's in the bag. An officer read it aloud, written in Mom's neat handwriting. We're taking what's rightfully ours. You've had your time. Don't come looking. We'll return them once they understand who their true family is. Jessica came downstairs once the kids were distracted by a movie, pretending everything was okay. But her hands were shaking. How long have you been planning this? She demanded. Mom lifted her chin. Since Emma's last birthday. When you seated us near the kitchen. When her other grandparents helped with the cake, and we just stood there. You were 2 hours late. Jessica exploded. The party was nearly over. You never asked us to help. Never made room for us, Dad muttered. We tried. I snapped. You never called. And Mrs. Hayward, the officer announced, you are being taken into custody for plotting to abduct minors, unlawful possession of a firearm, and holding controlled substances without a valid prescription. As they were escorted outside, my mother turned to look back. Her eyes glistened with something like regret. We only wanted to love them, she murmured. No, Jessica said softly. You wanted to possess them. What followed in the investigation was even more terrifying than we imagined. They had been organizing this for months, maybe longer. They had fake passports ready for each child, all under fabricated names. Their financial records showed regular transfers to an offshore account designed to be untraceable. There was no condo in Florida. That had been a lie. Instead, they had prepaid 6 months in full for a secluded rental property in Mexico, all in cash. They had searched international homeschooling laws, focusing specifically on countries without extradition agreements. They had even looked up how to make children forget their parents. They were planning to vanish with our children and never return. That night, after the kids were tucked safely in bed, Jessica broke down sobbing. They were going to disappear with them, she cried. They were going to erase us. The courtroom battle was grueling. Their lawyer tried to portray them as devoted grandparents pushed too far by ungrateful children. But the mountain of evidence told a different story. Carefully plotted steps, dangerous drugs, forged documents. On the witness stand, my mother broke. Her face streaked with tears, she said. I just wanted to be their grandmother. Not an obligation. Not a courtesy invite. A real grandmother. And you thought kidnapping was the answer, the prosecutor pressed. It wasn't kidnapping, she insisted. It was rescue. From a son who abandoned his roots, who chose her family over his own. My father was even more cold. No remorse. No doubt. A man has a right to his bloodline, he declared. Those kids carry my name. My legacy. I won't apologize for reclaiming what's mine. They were both found guilty. Sentenced to 15 years behind bars. Eligible for parole and 7 with good behavior. But the most painful part wasn't the trial. It was sitting down with our children and trying to explain. Emma understood more than we expected. Grandma and Grandpa were going to take us away, she said quietly. They were confused, I said gently. They made some very bad choices because they were hurting. But they would have brought us back, right? Luke asked with wide eyes. Jessica and I looked at one another, neither able to answer. The house rental in Mexico was 6 months. The offshore funds could have lasted much longer. and their internet history painted a picture of permanent disappearance. New names. New lives. "We're not sure, sweetheart," Jessica said softly. "But you're safe now. That's what matters most." The twins bounced back quickly, as young children often do. Emma, however, struggled. She began double-checking that all doors were locked at night. She had recurring nightmares. "Why didn't they just ask to spend more time with us?" she whispered one evening. I held her close. "I don't know, baby. Sometimes grown-ups make things complicated when they should be simple." After the sentencing, my brother called me for the first time in years. He had moved to the other side of the country to escape the very people now behind bars. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I can't say I'm shocked. Remember when we were kids? How Mom used to say we belonged to her. How Dad said we were his." The memories came flooding back. The fury when I picked a college too far from home. The rage when I married Jessica instead of the girl they handpicked. The way they referred to my children as their second chance. Jessica finding that bag, my brother said, "She saved everything." He was right. 20 more minutes, and they would have been gone. Drugged and vanished, leaving us to wake to silence and a note. Their forged passports were heartbreaking. Emma would have become Catherine. Luke Michael. Mason David. New identities. New lives. Children reshaped to fit the fantasy of grandparents who love the idea of family more than the responsibility of it. It's been 2 years now. The children are thriving. Emma's in therapy and doing much better. The twins, now 7, barely recall that night. Jessica's parents relocated closer to us and embraced their grandparent role with real love, not control. Occasionally, I still get letters from prison. I stopped opening them long ago. The early ones were filled with venom and twisted logic. We could have given them the world. You stole our redemption. A real son would understand. But I am a real son. A son who put his children's safety first. Who realized that being a parent doesn't mean owning your child. It means protecting them, even from your own parents if you must. My parents had 12 years to be present, to earn trust, to build relationships with their grandkids. They chose distance. Then they chose obsession. Now, somewhere in an evidence locker, a duffel bag remains, filled with nightmares that never came true, 3 tiny suitcases never used, sedatives never consumed, and a loaded weapon never fired. But all of it proof that the people meant to love our children were the ones they most needed shielding from. Sometimes, I wonder what might have happened if Jessica hadn't reached for that bag. If she had simply let it be. Would we have come home to an empty house and a letter? Would we have spent years searching while my parents played make-believe in Mexico? I'll never know. What I do know is this. My wife didn't brush it off. She didn't hesitate. She screamed when I might have paused. And that scream saved our family. Our children were spared because Jessica trusted her instincts. Because she refused to dismiss what didn't feel right. The kids don't ask about them anymore. Their lives are filled with people who love them in the way children deserve, gently, completely unconditionally. Family friends, aunts and uncles, Jessica's parents, people who see children as people, not possessions. My parents once offered to babysit, but what they were really offering was a trap disguised as kindness. They underestimated us. They underestimated Jessica. And they severely misjudged how far we'd go to protect our children. Did I go too far by testifying against them? Some relatives think so. They still send Christmas cards, but only addressed to the children. As if Jessica and I no longer exist. They speak of forgiveness, of healing, of second chances. But I know what their second chance looked like. It was filled with pills, restraints, and escape routes. So no, I didn't go too far. If anything, I waited too long. Spent too many years ignoring warning signs and minimizing controlling behavior. It took a bag full of horror to finally see my parents for who they really were, not misguided elders, but a danger to everything I hold dear. That night, our anniversary dinner never happened. Instead, we ordered pizza and sat on the couch holding our children tightly, grateful beyond words. Now, we celebrate differently. No fancy restaurants. No candles or wine. Just the 5 of us, together, safe, and deeply aware of how close we came to losing it all. My parents are eligible for parole in 5 years. By then, they'll be in their 70s. Maybe they'll be harmless. Maybe not. Either way, they will never lay eyes on my children again. Because being a parent means doing whatever it takes to protect your kids, even when the threat comes from those who raised you. Love does not mean control. Family does not mean entitlement. And DNA, it's not a permission slip to steal someone else's life. They broke that trust the moment they packed that bag.